Welcome to the Justice Room. Your life, your rights, your options. Experience and learn from discussions with legal professionals and other experts about the law, its challenges, and how it could affect you. Here at the Justice Room. Welcome to the Justice Room. I'm glad you mentioned those.
Thank you.
One of the
I like
questions,
making a difference, especially in the lives of children. That just rocks my world.
It was very clear to me that you enjoy working with children just by where you spend a lot of your time volunteering for the community. Why did you decide finally that you wanted to run for judge in Seminole County Group 5?
Well, quite frankly, it's the only open seat on the county court bench in Seminole County. There isn't more than one Seminole County judge that is retiring this year. Mm-hmm. And I thought that county court was perfect for somebody like me, because county court is really people's court. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of the people in there do not have lawyers, can't afford lawyers. Right. And I'm a person that likes to deal with, regular people, counseling them, educating them, and maybe I may be a little naive about this, but I think that every once in a while on the bench, I might be able to redirect somebody to not graduate to felonies, because county court deals with the smaller things, the misdemeanors, the small claims. Maybe I can make a difference in people's lives.
That leads me to another question. I'd like to ask you, what would you like to see accomplished should you be elected judge, and while you're in office there?
Well, I guess the stock Mr. America answer would be world peace, but seeing as how I can't affect that in more than a very tiny way, with maybe my votes, I'd like to see a courtroom where people really feel welcome. It's such a foreign experience to go into a courtroom for an average person. Right. You and I understand who the players are, right, the rules, but for the average person, it's like having surgery.
Right. It's a very scary experience for some people.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think one of the things that a judge should do, especially in a county court position, is make people feel welcome. Have a courtroom where people understand they'll be listened to, their arguments will be taken seriously, but they will be treated fairly and a timely decision. I'd like to see more judges actually get involved in the community, and if I can set an example, I will. I don't plan on stopping being involved, Jay, with all these organizations as a judge. Right. I plan on opening more doors and having access to more resources to do more good, especially for kids.
Well, I have another question here that I wanted to ask. What specific change do you think that the judges need that would be beneficial should you be candidate judge, that you think you would like to see while you're in office? That a specific kind of change? I mean, you're talking about just children, or is there something in general?
Well, the reality is we're not going to see a whole lot of changes with the budgetary constraints that we have. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality. Everything's been shrunk, from the judicial assistants to the staff to the clerk's office. Right. And so to make things better is going to be very difficult. Keeping things where they are is really hard enough right now in the judicial system. I mean, I don't know if you agree with that.
I have to agree with you, yes. And the budget cuts have been absolutely, I don't think a lot of...
They're brutal.
They have been very
And
tough.
What so many people don't understand, and I'm not trying to lecture to anybody, but everybody wants more boots on the street. They want more cops. They want more law enforcement, which is fine. But when you have more law enforcement, the inevitable result is you have more arrests. Yeah. And they have more prosecutions, and they don't add more prosecutors, they don't add more PDs, they don't add more judges when they add more law enforcement, which puts more pressure on the system. Yeah. And then you got this foreclosure bubble that's hanging over everything. And so I being honest and real, early stage of my judgeship are probably just maintain a level of get the cases heard timely, have a docket that runs smoothly, make people feel welcome, treat everybody with respect, make sure that everybody knows they're going to have fair decisions. But over time, if we do have some budget loosening, I think that you can do some things in the community and in the courtroom that might make a difference.
Now, how much freedom do you think a judicial candidate should have to express his or her views?
Well, the reason I'm somewhat tripping on my tongue on this is that I'm not sure I'm allowed to say that the people that have written these rules were wrong.
Okay.
And the people that wrote the rules for judges decided that we're supposed to be separate and apart from any political party, any candidate, any real position on issues.
Yeah.
Because we're not supposed to be biased toward or against any particular side on any issue. Me personally, I think that is somewhat disingenuous because everybody comes to the plate with certain life experiences, certain biases that they like or they don't like, based upon their personal experiences and professional experiences. And I think perhaps the public should know, where do I stand on this issue before I get into office? But right now, I walk a lot and meet a lot of voters, and they always want to know, where do I stand on the abortion issue, the ultrasound that was just vetoed by Governor Christ? Where do I stand on the death penalty? And I can tell them what I've done in my life that might give them a clue, but I can't actually come out and say, I'm for or against this. Right. And I truly believe that's disingenuous to the voting public, and probably why most people have such a hard time deciding who to vote for judge, because they don't know what their position is.
Right. Now, that leads me to another question. Do you think that the people should elect the judges, or do you feel that they should be appointed by a commission? Should they be appointed by the governor? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, currently 24 states appoint and 26 states elect. So it's kind of an even split. If I was in charge of the system, I would have a hybrid of the two. I would allow people to apply for a judgeship to make sure that we get qualified candidates that have the trial experience, the life experience, the understanding of the community, things that you absolutely have to have just to be a good judge. And then I'd have them screened by a judicial nominating committee like they are now, Judicial Nominating Commission. And then the top 3 of those that the Judicial Nominating Commission felt were qualified should have to run against each other. And then let the voters decide.
Okay. Another question that I want to ask you, and I think the people might want to know about this, and I'm going to put it as a 2-part question. 1, what has been your greatest accomplishment in your legal career? And 2, who has been a major influence on you and why?
The most major accomplishment I've probably had in my career was in 1993, there were some major legislative changes that came down in the workers' comp system. And so they had to rewrite the rules. And this is before I was ever on the Rules Committee. That was in the late 90s and early part of this decade. I don't know if we call it 2000s or whatever you want to call this decade. A couple of those rules that were proposed made it through the Florida Bar Board of Governors and were sent to the Supreme Court. And I didn't agree with a couple of them. And so I actually was the only attorney in the state of Florida to go up and argue in front of the Florida Supreme Court on behalf of all the workers in Florida, all of them in the whole state, to get some of the rules changed. And I actually convinced the Supreme Court to send 2 of the rules back to the Rules Committee, and they changed them.
Really?
Really.
Okay, that sounds nice.
And as far as the biggest influence on my legal career was Colonel Maury Benson, who flew 50 bombing missions in World War II. His picture was on the cover of Time magazine. He was Harry Truman's JAG, his lawyer. Took me under his wing and taught me how to be a professional, how to do everything the way it should be done, always turning over evidence to the other side. One of the things I'm most proud about, Jay, that I'm not sure how many attorneys can say is, in the last 20 years, once have I ever had an order to compel me or my clients to do anything.
Really?
If you want the evidence, if it's legitimately discoverable, I turn it over. And so Maury really taught me how to be a lawyer.
Well, let me ask you, since you mentioned the word lawyer, it kind of brings me up to my next question. Have you ever been disciplined by the Florida Bar?
Of course not.
Okay.